right now is Mr. Keep Running Your Mouth. That's what I do.
I just feel like I'm the champ, and at the end of the day, I'm just a fighting motherfucker. Doesn't matter. Inside, outside, I can just fight. So I just feel like if it gets down to the wire, and we gotta lock it up, I'm out on top.
Hey, look, as you can see how I'm looking, I stay solid. I'm always solid. I stay fucked up, man. You know what I'm saying? To the fans and all that.
You jump outside the ring. I'm a fighter. Like I said before, ain't no safety on the clock, so.
I'll take them how they come and make them look ordinary.
Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to BodyWorkBoxing. And last night we had a great night of boxing. You know, it was the Vergil Ortiz versus Mckinson undercard. And I would say the most competitive fight of the night was Guzman versus Esparza. Esparza, man, I love her technique. I love, you know, it's just unique to watch her. She got the little typewriter feet. She can throw out that jab. She got the 1-2. She was changing levels. But I say that fight was very competitive, but the scores really didn't reflect how competitive that fight was. It was just clear that every round you can clearly see that Esparza did more than Guzman. But Guzman is a tough cookie. I love her technique and style, and I think that, you know, if they were a little lower in weight class, I think she could have got Esparza. But, you know, she fared well. They fared well. You know, I'll be forgetting that it's 2-minute rounds, but that was the most action-packed fight as far as, you know, being a competitive where, you know, eventually you kind of knew who was going to win, but you really didn't because it was looking like Guzman was going to turn up at some point. But, you know, I guess maybe the weight class, I'm not sure what it was. It was really like my first time seeing Guzman, but salute to women's boxing, man. It's definitely growing. It's definitely a treat when you can really see the ones that put in the training and have the skills. You know, I think that it's growing. I think that the zone is the specialty place for women's boxing, you know, at the time. You know, they actually cater some of the best boxing events. Moving right along to the Blair Cobbs. Blair Cobbs and Maurice Hooker got it on. Before the fight, when I saw Blair Cobbs, I said he looked like he was in phenomenal shape, but he did have that weight drain look. His eyes looked bloodshot red. Maurice Hooker was out of shape, out of weight, had a heavy heart because he lost his mother figure, you know, and some of us can't relate to actually losing your mom and the feeling and the heavy heart that you could have. So I couldn't imagine going into a fight like that. However, you know, we gotta note that Blair to Flair, you know, got rid of Freddie Roach, you know, and I know Freddie Roach is, you know, the people's coach, you know, mainly for a lot of the years he spent with Manny Pacquiao. But, you know, a lot of us in the boxing community have been questioning how long Freddie Roach was actually going to be doing this. You know, it's clear his mind is still there, and, you know, he gives good instructions, but Blair chose to make a switch, and you could clearly see that his head movement game and his foot movement game was very good. It's just Blair at this point in time, because he's not in his early 20s, I think that some of the things that he do is just set in his ways, and I think that his biggest issue is his mechanics. This is his mechanics, man. He'll throw a shot and leave it out there, and his biggest flaw to me is admiring his work. It's like when he know he has some power, when Blair got some power, but he stand there and admires and looks and see how bad the damage was that he did instead of getting his hand back in position to protect his chin so you can counter him all night. He caught Maurice Hooker a couple times. He knocked him down. You know, he pretty much had his way, but it seemed like Maurice Hooker just wanted to bang. And, you know, even though Bud and Bomac was actually trying to coach him through it, he just didn't, you know, I guess with the emotions and, you know, him not being able to train. You know, they say he be on the treadmill crying and stuff, and, you know, it was just not a good time and probably not a good match fighting somebody like Blair to Flair, who had something to prove coming off the loss to Alexis Rocha. So, Blair wound up getting a decision like everybody was thinking that he would. His face was busted up. He is, a red guy, so it's not hard to actually, bust somebody's face up of that complexion. So it was a good fight. I think Maurice Hooker, he has to go back and do some self-inventory and see if boxing is something that he wants to continue on with, because the Maurice Hooker that everybody know and revered, we're only seeing glimpses of it right now. And they kept talking about how low his punch output was and his work rate. And, for a lot of the times, especially in those later rounds, man, like it was like he let Flair Cobbs just get on his bike. He followed him around a lot. And he was, he didn't cut the ring off effectively, being a taller, longer fighter. Knowing that Blair was really just looking for the left hand. So overall, a decent fight to watch, a good filler for the undercard. But let's talk about the main event. Going into the main event, we're talking about Vergil Ortiz. I liken him to a moniker that I call him the Piranha, and going into it, I was looking at Mike Mckinson, who was 22-0 with only 2 KOs. Now, he was undefeated, but he only had 2 KOs, and instantly all I kept thinking was the Hurt Locker. I said, man, Vergil Ortiz is going to put this boy in the Hurt Locker. It wasn't as brutal as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't. But I said, Vergil was one of them people that if you don't have anything to keep him honest and keep him off of you, or anything that really is going to make him respect you, he's going to take. Now, he'll take more than one. Vergil, he pretty much has a mindset to where he's just going to take whatever you give him, to get his off, because he know that if he can land his, it's a wrap. And it's accumulation, because he's a devastating body puncher. He's up under Arrow as far as body work, but he's a vicious body puncher, and that's what I like about him. And so going into it, Vergil was 18-0 with 18 knockouts. He had the height and the reach advantage, being 5'10", and Mckinson being 5'9", and having a 71-inch reach, with Mckinson having a 70-inch reach. And as far as the betting odds, he came in at negative 1,200. So he had a year-long layoff, so everybody was wondering, how he was going to fare, if he was still the guy that, we knew him to be on those previous 18 fights. And it's clear that he was. He looked very serious. Mckinson looked very calm. And I was like, man, he looked so relaxed, and he fought at times, like in the first round, he pretty much stood his ground or was on the back foot. Mckinson was. He had landed a couple shots, but after he got wobbled by Vergil, it was a headbutt. It was lefty versus righty. Lefty being Mckinson, righty being Vergil. And that's what actually caused the headbutt. And, Vergil, as always, in the second round, he was on that body attack. He had a great body attack. Mckinson had, got off a check right hook. He was kind of landing that because of the style, and, that southpaw is kind of easy. In the third round, he knocked out a mouthpiece, and, Mckinson had caught Vergil with a straight left, and I called it bum rush. Pretty much all night, what Vergil did was just bum rush Mckinson. In the fourth round was more vicious body work. I felt like Vergil got reckless at times. I felt like there were times in that fight that he got away with some things that he would not be able to get away with some of the higher caliber fighters. He wouldn't be able to do that with Bud. He wouldn't be able to do that with Spence. He wouldn't be able to do that with Boots. It's a lot of people he wouldn't be able to do that with. More vicious body work in the fourth. In the fifth, it was just work rate. Mckinson had a lower work rate, and Vergil just kept going to work. Mckinson allowed himself to be outworked, You know, in the 6, he was effective at times, but he just, you know, with being that far behind on the scorecards at that point in time, you know, he didn't do enough to really, you know, demand any attention or demand any like real praise for anything he was really doing. You know, it was an elegant survival. That's pretty much what it was. You know, it wasn't ugly. It wasn't like he was running. He was there, but he was just really in survival mode, trying to mitigate the damage as much as possible. And 9th round, pretty much, it was just a stoppage. You know, it got waved off by the corner. You know, I respect the corner for doing that, because if you have, you know, a talented individual who has some talent and has, you know, a fruitful career, at some point in time when you know that there's really no way to win the fight and your fighter is just taking unnecessary punishment, some of which you can kind of like limit, you know, and you can get back in the saddle, you can get yourself, you know, your mechanics fixed or whatever flaws you were actually putting on film, you can get back into camp, you know, after some rest, after some healing, you can get back in camp and you can kind of regroup and you can have a fruitful career. Because the way Vergil Ortiz operates, it's a lot like Spence. You can tell a lot of these guys, you know, imitate or actually, you know, look up to certain styles. You can see the young guys, some of the young guys that's coming out emulating Tank, and you can see some of these other guys actually emulating Spence, where it's not the prettiest, you know, style, but it's very brutal, because they start beating the body so bad that your arms come down. And when you think they're going downstairs and they go upstairs, pretty much they hitting you with the same impact in your temple or in your chin that they was actually hitting your bread basket or your liver with or your solar plexus with. And it's an instant damage, and that can cause a lot of head damage. It can have a lot of head trauma, the brain rattling, things like that. So overall, I enjoyed the fight. You know, it seemed, at some points it did seem kind of long. But, you know, Vergil was one of my guys. You know, I had him up there. He was in my intro. And I think that he is a force to be reckoned with. Whether he's ready for a Boots or a Crawford or a Spence, who knows? You know, at one point I did think he was ready for Bud. Like when he did the call out after the Maurice Hooker and he called Bud out, you know, I thought he was actually ready. But I'm not sure if he's ready. I think he might need, you know, maybe a couple more fights. But this was a title eliminator, you know. So we got to see what comes down the pike. We got to see what, you know, what's going on with the Spence and Crawford fight. Everybody's biting their nails, all on the edge. We got a cliffhanger right now. A lot of people are, you know, saying that Bud is not signing a contract and he's dragging his feet. A lot of people saying that, oh man, Spence need to just break off half. There's just a lot of politics going around that fight, but that fight, you know, is actually putting 47 and the world of boxing, in the sport of boxing, on hold, because it's the largest fight to be made. I'm bringing that up because Vergil Ortiz may be in line to get Spence, and that would not be a bad fight. Style-wise, you know, the styles are kind of similar. I think Errol is way more responsible on defense. I think that Vergil, you know, he's a little reckless at times, but if he thinks that or feels as though you cannot, you know, do anything to seriously hurt him, he's going to get on you. He's going to pounce on you, and once he smells blood, he's like a piranha. As simple as that. So who knows? But, you know, I would love to know, you know, what were your thoughts on the fight? How did you view the fight? You know, did Vergil look like the Vergil of yesterday? You know, before the rhabdomyosin? Is he the same guy? Does he have the potential to actually make a Spence fight or a Bud fight competitive? You know, will we be looking at a speedy Rashidi Ellis? Would that be with a Stanionis? Would that be a good fight? You know, I think him and Stanionis would be a good fight. I think Boots and Stanionis would be a good fight. I don't think right now that Boots and Vergil would be a good fight. At one point, you know, the guy from Sean Porter's podcast said that Boots would actually wash Vergil. And I was like, wash? But now I'm not saying that Boots would wash him. I just think that his offensive attack and how accurate he is with his punches and how fluid he is and free to let his hands go, I just don't think that right now would be a good time. You know, even though I think that if Vergil was a little bit more defensively responsible, that would be a damn good fight. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. You know, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You know, like, comment. You know, feel free to give any kind of feedback. And, you know, how'd you enjoy the fight? I'd like to know. You can hit me up at BodyWorkBoxing247@gmail.com. And on Instagram, it's Mr_BodyWorkBoxing. Thanks for tuning in here at BodyWorkBoxing, where we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
My word, I do what I do. He knows what I'm about to tell him right now. It's Mr. Keep running your mouth. That's what I do.
I just feel like I'm the champ, and at the end of the day, I'm just fighting no fucker. Doesn't matter. Inside, outside, I can just fight. So I just feel like if it gets down to the wire, we gotta lock it up, I'm out on top.
Hey, look, as you can see how I'm looking, I stay solid. I'm always solid. I stay fucked up, man. You know what I'm saying? To the fans that know.
Do that job outside the ring. I'm a fighter, like I said before. Ain't no safety on the clock, so